Welcome to the session on financial inclusion in a time of COVID, lessons and experiences. So I will be joined by an esteemed panelist, group of panelists, Mr. Shameran, Abed, Executive Director, BRAC International. Could you please come over? Kamal Quadir, CEO of bkash. And then Faheem Ali, coming all the way from Kenya, joining us today. Faheem Ali, Chief Technology Officer, Elite Digital Solutions. And Ms. Sonia, Bashir, Kabir, founder and CEO, Managing Director, SBK Ventures. So please join me in the panel. So we have 60 precious minutes in front of us discussing a very, very big topic, digital financial inclusion. But this is a very important topic, very important inclusion agenda for the countries, especially in the Global South. And we'll be talking not only about Bangladesh, but also we'll be hearing the Global South's experience and then zoom into Bangladesh. We have a very rich audience here, so we would like to hear from you. We would like to know your experiences too. So like our BRAC colleagues has presented, we are using technology today connected to Stylo. I think it's called a Stylo, if I'm not wrong. So please have your questions out there. I'll be looking at them, and I'll try to key into the questions as the discussion move along. So I would see whether there's a need for a dedicated Q&A session, but my plan would be to reflect on your questions as the discussion move on. We have a lot to learn from our esteemed colleagues. And so without further ado, I'll go to the colleagues, but also let's take a look back 2.5 years, I think, already, when the pandemic started. And it kind of moved the world forward in terms of technology adaptation. But the key question is whether that adaptation was skewed towards a specific group or whether it was spilled over across different groups. And our area of interest, our focus group, are today the people, the low-income population in the Global South, but also we'll be opening the forum to discuss about the solutions that cut across different groups. So first I'll move on to Faheem Ali, CTO, Elite Digital Solutions. So Faheem, welcome to Bangladesh. You have been to the field, I think a lot of reflection from the field as well, but also a lot of experience in Africa. So please take us through the journey of Africa in COVID response and the solution.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so thank you to the BRAC team first. There was a very good experience yesterday on this field trip. We have experienced the financial inclusion, actually. What is financial inclusion, by the way? If I may ask from any one of you, definitely the answer will be that it should be a credit facilities, health facilities, education facilities, and then again the impact analysis. And we have really experienced this yesterday. The credit facility was seamless. There was no any issues. We went in one of the village organization. The health facilities was there. The health workers was really trained. Actually, I went and I said that I'm feeling very, drowsy. Can you please check my my BP? And they did it very well. And then afterwards, education also, the way the education is being taught over there. Then again, the foundation was really wonderful. So I would like all of you to please give a hand to the BRAC team who have done a wonderful job. Thank you so much. Wonderful. So yeah, going back to Africa. So I'm working in Eastern African region. I'm from Kenya. So in Eastern African, when COVID hit, let me tell what before COVID we were doing. So before COVID, let me give you a very good example of Mama Boga. Mama Boga is like a senior lady who is in the open market vendor. Over there, the open market vendors are more females or women's. So this Mama Boga, she wakes up early in the morning. She get the loan from dialing the USSD code, for example, *486#. She gets the loan immediately in the M-Wallet. After getting that loan in M-Wallet, she goes and buys the inventory, the stocks, as a fruit seller, and then she sells the fruit. Once she's done with the fruit selling, Sometimes she gets the money in whatever she's selling, she gets again in the mobile money, in the mobile wallet, or maybe cash. So then she goes to the merchant or agent. I'm sure you all have heard M-Pesa agents. So M-Pesa is a common one in Africa and in Kenya. So she goes to the M-Pesa agent, she deposits all the money. If the loan is to be repaid or daily or weekly or monthly, then she repays the loan and borrow another loan on the second day or another week or a month. So this is what going on, before COVID. Immediately when the COVID hit, the pandemic was there. Now, all these street vendor was told by government, you cannot do the business. It was like everything was closed. Now it was not matter of how she can get the loan. It was matter of how she can actually, earn. There was a fruit security because she was earning daily and eating and then again, going back to the business to do the same job. So it was more from the food security point of view. It was more from the humanity point of view. So financial inclusion, now how the financial institutions can help here. Immediately we have started the emergency loans. Emergency loans was more from how, we can help the people in the areas where they are facing some concerns, the food securities, the hygiene securities. Now we can also not go in the rural areas. It was also closed for us. So we have started the radio services. We have started the WhatsApp groups because again in Africa, almost everyone, 85% as also Hillary said that 85% of the people are actually having WhatsApp or maybe the smartphones. So we have done the WhatsApp services and so on to do these services. I will talk more on the digital areas also, what we have implemented, maybe on your later question. So this is what the COVID have really impacted in African region and overall in the Eastern Africa. Thank you.
Great. So, right, I mean, in Africa, the use of WhatsApp or radio services, I think complementary technologies and services were also being used in this space. So that's a fantastic point, but you're also talking about, let's say, loans and then how it was affected. In Bangladesh, we have seen, digital financial services being used for social safety net disbursement. So the use case probably increased a lot. So let's reflect on the use case, Shameran. I mean, so from BRAC's experience in microfinance, in let's say, in BRAC enterprises, how have you seen the use case for digital financial services increasing because of COVID-19?
Yeah, thanks very much. First of all, it's great to be back at FIF. I think it's great to have FIF back. So after a few years, and it's a slightly upgraded location. So it's strange to be sitting at this 5-star venue for FIF. Usually we have it out in Sarwar, which is our own venue, but it's great to be back and it's good to be having these conversations again. So thank you for that. Multiple ways to answer that question, but maybe I'll just take this first opportunity to reflect on that first sort of lockdown, right? Which was the most, that was the most serious one. We were all scared. We didn't know what was going on. Nobody left their homes. And, I'm talking about March, April, May, June of 2020, right? And that one globally was difficult for low-income people, right? Because I think one thing we've got to realize is we were having a health crisis that was leading to an economic crisis. And the economic crisis was as a result not of the health crisis, but because of the actions taken to limit the health crisis, which was the lockdowns, right? Now, even in East Africa, right, every country had a very different experience. So you're talking about the experience of Kenya, for example, but if you go next door to Tanzania, where they didn't even go into lockdowns, things were very different from if you went to Uganda, where they had very strict lockdowns, right? So how each of those actions taken by governments impacted the lives of people, low-income people in poverty and low-income people were vastly different. But let me start from the Bangladesh experience. So here, during that first lockdown, what we realized very quickly, and some of our learning actually also came from dealing with the Ebola crisis in West Africa in 2014 and 15 because it was very similar. It was a health crisis that led to a complete national shutdown in those two countries, Liberia and Sierra Leone, where BRAC works, where for about 6-7 months we couldn't do any financial transactions, right? And we kind of took a lot of learning from that. So when COVID started, we said, what did we learn from that experience? And what we realized is, you know, again, there's a lot of difference in the way people experience these things. So if you're urban poor, it's very different. And we saw a huge migration back to the villages. But if you're rural poor and you're mostly in the agrarian sector and you know, your life doesn't stop. You have to continue doing it. You've planted, you need to keep working. And you need to continue to get financial services. And unfortunately, for 2-3 months, we weren't able to do anything, right? We weren't able to lend, we weren't able to collect, we weren't even savings. We had to figure out how do we get, people are saving with us for a rainy day. This is the rainy day. How do we get savings back to people when we've been asked not to open branches, not to go out, not to do anything? So people have savings with financial institutions, but they can't access those savings. So one of the first things we needed to do at that time in 2020 was try to figure out how quickly can we go digital, actually, right? And we did. We actually, you know, partnered with bkash here in Bangladesh, and we tried to sign up, you know, all of our microfinance clients onto bkash accounts, not to do credit transactions, but to do deposit transactions. We wanted them to be able to get their savings out, because you need to keep people liquid, right? At a difficult time, people need cash, and you need to be able to give them cash, right? So that was one of the first things we had to work on. That was the first one. After the things started to normalize a little bit, by the time the second and third hits happened in 2021 with Delta and other things, by that time we had a year to prepare, and we were much better off because we had gone much more digital. And by that time, we were able to transact a lot more. East Africa, similar experience. Countries that are more technologically sort of there, so I'm talking about the East African markets, Uganda, Tanzania, you know, we were able to very quickly, you know, move from a non-digital situation to a highly digital situation. You know, we signed up very quickly, we started doing transactions, and we could keep people within financial services. That made a huge difference. Again, going to West Africa, where we don't have an M-Pesa and we don't have those systems, you know, these long lockdowns really impacted the lives of poor people. So I think, you know, going back, I would say from the financial services space, you know, I'll go back to something Abhijit Banerjee said, you know, because we had a webinar with him sort of early in the first COVID lockdown period. Asif Bhai was on that panel, and he said, you know, at a time like this, you just need to figure out how to get money into the hands of people. And governments need to do as large stimulus packages as they can possibly afford, and if needed, print money and get it out. Because the worst thing that you can do is dry up liquidity. And people are sitting there, it's a health crisis, not an economic crisis, but you create an economic crisis by drying up liquidity and people not being able to do anything. And that's a bigger challenge than what you're trying to solve for, right?
Super. I think, I mean, what we're establishing here is that the use cases increased significantly because of the pandemic. Like, I mean, you then needed to figure out how the savings can be liquidated digitally, and also then eventually in the next waves and rounds, I mean, those were used more significantly. And I think the reason why we're discussing about Africa is that M-Pesa and the likes, they evolved from there. And so Africa has a plethora of experience for the world. So coming to Quadir, to you, I mean, we are talking about financial services. bkash is one of our frontline agencies working on this, and I'm pretty sure you have observed firsthand the uptick of services. I have a lot of data in front of me saying how, let's say, the digital services were adopted in Bangladesh. Subscribers increased significantly, but previously we struggled. For example, in RMG sector, we struggled to push mobile-based salary payment and so on and so forth. So this has happened. But also, I'm keen to learn whether we are kind of seeing a reversal of it as well, because now we are not probably in the pandemic situation. Are we also seeing a reversal? What are we seeing from the first-line service provider's point of view? Over to you.
Well, thank you. And first of all, it's very nice of Frugal Innovation Forum to invite me here. what you said, and it reminded me a perception that exists in the market. Um, you know, it's like when somebody meets a doctor, people immediately think about all the medical issues they have. So when I meet friends, they always think about money. Okay? and when during the COVID time, everybody starts saying that, you know, everything is down, but your business must be going very high. Okay? Data-wise, our business was actually going down. And I want to clarify a little bit here, is that we need to remember that if platform like bkash, we do not touch money physically. You would go to bkash offices or bkash center, we never physically touch the cash. We totally depend on the banking system of the country. So what people do not see, that on an average day, we visit bank branches for 2,200 times to deposit the physical cash, accumulated cash, or collect the cash from the bank branches and distribute it among the agent. So when the banking hours were limited to 1 hour, and subsequently it increased to 2 hours, 4 hours, we could not put money in the electronic money in the system. So if I can give an analogy, banking system is like the Ganges river system or the Brahmaputra river system. Service like us, like small canals, they take the money from the main river and take it to the paddy field and the jute field. So when the main river did not have adequate water, service like us was totally ineffective. So that's one thing. Another reality of a country like Bangladesh, despite all our effort, we are not fully digitalized. We still need agent network. Many of them don't have bank accounts. People are very much dependent on going to an agent and funding their wallet. So those things were limited. And after 2 months of persuasion, government declared us as an essential service. But until that moment when an agent is opening a shop, law enforcement was going after him saying things would be closed. So, and even when you give the status of essential service, trickling down that information to all the way to the rural part of the country where common people are using or used to using bkash, information didn't reach overnight. So when you put all this factor together, the overall bkash transaction was lower. But in the urban setting where we operate, but that's very handful of us, they were using bkash more than before. And I'm very pleased that they were using bkash more, but COVID is too big a scars we didn't want COVID to come to increase the adoption, okay? But yes, subsequently, banking hours were expanded, and there are lots of positive example use cases that has emerged. Shameran mentioned about a few. You mentioned about the government initiative. The RMG adoption was quite dramatic because central bank as well as Ministry of Finance was working with us very closely and figuring out what is our capacity. And we, at some point, registered more than 100,000 customers every day to make sure that each and every the government subsidy that it was not exactly a subsidy, the government support that was given, it goes to the right person. Okay. So coming back to this thing that we are practitioner. The bird's eye view is one kind of view we see, but when you go to the ground and implement it, that's when you have to deal with the worm's eye view, and it had its challenges. There are few initiatives. I felt almost coincidentally we were working at a time just before COVID hit. For example, pulling money from bank to bkash accounts, linking with Visa to bkash. okay? And so those were excellent. That worked very well, very timely, okay? And we were able to serve the customer. In the case of RMG, when you said pull back, some people pulled back. Some people went back to the usual brick and mortar arrangement of giving people envelope and paying their salary. But the majority stayed, okay, because they do see the value. Same thing I would say that Shameran was mentioning from BRAC microfinance point of view, that they were trying to give people the savings they maintained through the channel. And subsequently, microfinance also started adopting it. But later, it was more person who is more prepared to do it. That's where things settle down. So anything, if you do it for a crisis period, that has one way of getting the value of the arrangement. But eventually, it settles down to where the skill sets are. And I would say, overall, it has been a catalyst. But remember, service like us, when I look at the overall number from 2018, how 2019 adoption was, and 2019 and 2020 to 21, it was not a dramatic impact of COVID, okay? It was rather, are we creating the right product, okay? Are we reaching the right customer, okay? Is our awareness about fraud is effective? Are we, so I think we can once in a while get this push for some unexpected event, but you cannot just think that has changed the industry altogether. So I was, with all due respect, I was reading the brief regarding this session, and a lot was about the COVID thing. But I feel overall technology cannot be really shaped by an incident, but it may have some impact, but not necessarily changing the course of the technology flow or the it's like, you know, you were talking about, I was just reading the memo, financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is a far bigger universal phenomena that cannot be, and people like Shameran would be better to speak on this thing, that cannot be really impacted by COVID itself. Fantastic. Or shaped.
Great. I think, in the next part of this session, we'll be discussing more, go deep in the financial inclusion part, but few things that I've taken note of. You said there was a pushback also, but overall, the industry was pushed to the frontier. There were some acceleration of adaptation of innovations that you wanted to do, like Visa cards and etc. But also, you pointed out the interconnections between the banking system and etc. So I think, what we learned that the interconnections of the different systems, it became very important and pivotal. And we needed to find out more efficient way of dealing with the interconnected systems. And that will lead me to Sonia, to you. So one issue is technology. Without technology, whatever we're talking about, digital financial services will not work. So I would want you to highlight some of the challenges that we observed and how we address those challenges and what remains, but also not just because you're a female speaker here, but still I would want to know your experience on how we are observing the divide, for not only women, but also for the disadvantaged communities, how the divide has been, shown more by the pandemic. Over to you, Sonia.
Thank you, Rubaiyath, and very honored to be speaking here today. So the first thing I'd like to say is that as a country and as a nation, we do have this initiative of a digital Bangladesh, and a lot of emphasis has been given on digital literacy. So that is the most important thing for people to be adopting technology. But digital literacy and a certificate by itself alone does not bring you up into a digitally inclusive society. What we really need is a digital economy, and payments is an integral part of that economy. So it's what happened, and I will go back in time and then come to COVID and move forward. COVID did accelerate digital transformation. On a global level, a company like Microsoft, which used to be my previous employer, was a $1 billion company before COVID, and it became a $1 trillion company after COVID, because the adoption, Zoom, Teams, whatever you call it, that the adoption was very high. But for a country like Bangladesh, I think that we do have to solve a bit more problem. So we have the device, the affordability is there, we do have low-cost phones, we have the connectivity, but what we do not have is consumption. And consumption drives usage of whatever data you are providing. So whether it is a fintech app, a health tech app, or an ed tech app, you have to be consuming it. And the question is, are we really solving the problems of the masses by offering services that we think are very cool? And a small example I will give to you, I have many banker friends who own banks, no offense to them. They've launched a lot of these women's banking services. And when you go to that center, it's like a 5-star hotel room where you can have tea and coffee. That's not solving the problem, right? None of us go there. So the question is the masses and the women, the MFI borrowers that we have. They are risk takers. They are taking loans without collateral, of course, but at very high interest rates. And the NPL is low. The NPL of commercial banks is much higher. What are we doing to solve the problem of these women and bringing them into a digitally, financially inclusive society? And I don't think we've asked that question. You know, it's very cool to have a solution and say, Mr. Problem, please come and find me. We really need to solve the problem. And when I say the problem, it's problem of the masses. So gender is a very important part here, where I think we need to work on that and see what do they need. We need to graduate from giving them loans to do their business to become entrepreneurs. Another thing that we've noticed in this digital world that I operate in, that the women who are in the rural areas are more of a risk taker than most of us sitting in this room. The highly qualified, we all have gone for government jobs or multinational jobs or very secure areas, so that risk-taking hasn't been there. And in order to adopt technology, there has to be a mindset change, and that's the first thing that I think we're working on, is change the mindset and embrace digital. There is a fear that we need to cross and say, yes, I am open to learning the techniques of using data that helps me solve my problem.
Fantastic. So, I mean, we talk about changing the mindset I mean, to embrace digital. I mean, I'll move on to the second round, but before moving on to that, I'll ask one specific question to each of my panelists. The question is, I mean, what challenges still remains to be solved? So if I ask each of you to pick one challenge that you want to draw attention to, what is that one big challenge that you still think remains unresolved? Digital financial services, adaptation. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first, the main challenge which still remains is the digital literacy. Okay. Because you see, what is digital, by the way? Digital financial services, digital transformations, digital adoption. What we are doing all this for what? We are doing all this for the customer. Mm-hmm. But do the customer really understand this? Do the customer really need this? Do the customer really adopted this? Is it affordable? Is it valuable for the customer? That's the main question, and key challenge still remains. Financial services, financial institutions are really doing good, but again, the end user, the customer experience is the key. So I think the digital literacy programs is still the key challenge, and so many institutions, financial institutions, and also, you know, the technology providers are not talking more on digital literacy programs.
I think you also spoke about the need of the financial service providers to understand the demand better. So at the consumer end, there is need for digital literacy. At the provider's end, knowing the demand better. Fantastic, and I think that's what, Sonia, you were also referring to, knowing the demand better. Shameran.
Yeah, I think I'm really struggling with trying to figure out what is my top thing to solve because there are multiple things to solve.
Okay, I'll give you two.
No, you know, I come at it from a different perspective. So I honestly don't think the issue is at the end of the user.
Okay.
All right? It is not a demand side issue.
Okay.
Very poor, very vulnerable, illiterate women and men have adopted to things very quickly,
Okay.
globally. So to say that, oh, they don't understand, they don't, they don't like it, or there's too much inertia and they don't want to adopt to digital, and they don't, I completely disagree with that, honestly. I think it's a demand side issue. I mean, sorry, it's a supply side issue.
Okay.
Right? Are we creating products that are good? Are we getting them out to people that need them in a way that is easy for them to access? At costs that are reasonable, right? In ways that are responsible. Those, to me, are the problems that need to be solved on digital, right? I know this is not a panel on microfinance, but financial service. I mean, microfinance is popular and NPLs are low because this is a product that has mass uptake, right? And every time we talk about microfinance, we throw in something around high rates. But I will, again, I don't want to, this is not, again, I'm not going to take time trying to talk about that. But rates are historically, like, if you think about for centuries and generations, what poor people have paid to borrow small amounts of money, right? And, money lending has been around for millennia, right? And if you look at what people can borrow now at, these are historically low rates, right? This whole concept of rates are high, I think we need to get that out of our head, because also, again, the unit economics of a $100, $200 loan, what you can do with it and the return that you can earn if you are able to access that money is very different from giving somebody a $100 million loan, right? You can't make 20% return per year on a $100 million loan, right? But you give 1,000 taka to a ferrywala, that person can take it and overnight buy thing and sell it for 1,500 taka. Okay, so he can make a 50% return on investment overnight. So don't confuse. Let's not confuse. Like, we take some of our banking ideals, right, and ideas, and they're very paternalistic ideas, and we apply them to people at the bottom of the pyramid. I think this is the problem we need to break out of, right? The issue is not at the end of the user. The issue is at the end of the provider.
Great.
We need to solve problems. And the other thing I would say is we really need to talk to regulators.
Regulators.
One of the big challenges I've seen, and this is not just in Bangladesh, in many markets, is that anytime something happens and we need to get out there and do things quickly, the people holding us back are our regulators. And they come around, as they did, as Kamal Bhai said, 2 months, 3 months later. But we've lost time. We need to get out there quicker, and sometimes the regulation is the problem. But yeah, I think I took more than one, but I'll stop there. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I think, it's hitting up. Is this a demand side or supply side issue or a policy issue? We are going to the whole market systems. But I think there is a pin of silence in the audience is because they're deeply listening. So, please send over your questions. I can't see them somehow, or do I? I'm getting the questions already, so I'll look at them. So please send them over. And Sonia, over to you. What challenge do you pick?
So I agree with what Shameran said, but in an ideal world, the underbanked and the unbanked could become banking customers and enjoy the same rates. That would be ideal, but we have a long way to go. But to answer your question, the one thing that I personally feel would change everything is the smartphone and feature phone ratio. Right now, we have 40% people of the population using smartphones, and 60 is feature. When you move everything into a smartphone, then the consumption factor becomes very easy.
Great. Kamal Bhai.
But I think it's difficult for us to say that we actually know exactly tell us one thing. So, I'll tell you a story. See, because it's a fancy place, We are well dressed and all this. Usually bkash is a very casual place. So I go to agent point, just hang around there and try to understand what's really going on. I used to do that more in the past, less nowadays, unfortunately. So it happened in Jinaidaho. I was sitting at an agent point and I saw a lady was cashing out 200 taka. And 200 taka, bkash transacts with small tickets. But 200 taka is even, it's very small for even for bkash. Average ticket is around 1100 to 1500 taka. So I asked her, Je, Apa, excuse my Bangla. I say, Apa, koto ki korben eta diye? Ta bolche je, first of all, she looked at me with some suspicions, that like, why am I asking? And then she said, Bajar at taka. Okay? So I said, good. I said, how is bkash? She didn't say anything. I said, bkash kemon? Then while she was leaving, she said, beshi bhalo bhalo na. And she walked away. And obviously it intrigued me and I shared this story earlier, so maybe some of you have heard this story before. So I followed her and I said, Keno ki hoyeche bolen? What happened? And then she said, Saheb, amar shami ebong amar chele দুজনই ঢাকায় রিকশা চালায় আগে তো সপ্তাহে একদিন এসে টাকা দিত এখন তো বিকাশ করেই খালাস okay. And it made me really realize that there's so much deeper problems that we technologists or financial service provider, we cannot just, sitting in a comfort zone, we cannot just determine overnight what is the problem, what is the solution. So it's a constant search we have to do, and some of them works, and not many of them, and you hear the good things about bkash. There are many things in bkash didn't work, okay? And that R&D, that search needs to continuously, we need to work on it. And another thing I want to say, it took almost 11 years for law enforcement, for regulators to, I would say Bangladesh Bank was very engaged, which was helpful, to recognize that we are not here for any chalaki. We are diligently working on building something, an institution, and building a service that is new. It might be new, but doesn't mean there's any trick involved here, okay? So this perception is also very important. Something that we are working on when there is we might have visited a regulator 5 times, 10 times before a circular is issued. But once the circular is issued, our objective is to stick to the circular and deliver the service as per the book. So I think it is very important because nothing can be done alone here. These are all like a relay race. One party does one other thing, another party does another thing. So having that trust and confidence that there are some people who are diligently, with a right attitude, the right mindset, with following the law and everything properly, is doing something. মানে গড্ডালিকা প্রভায়ে ভেসে সবকিছুই একটা ধানায় পানায়ের মধ্যে দিয়ে হচ্ছে এটা চিন্তা করা ঠিক না okay. Right. So it's a mindset issue that we need to be mindful of that.
Fantastic. And talking about that, we are hearing a lot of lived experiences from all of you from the field. Just to key into that, I mean, talking about adaptation, once we were doing a research on, let's say, why RMG workers, female workers were not liking mobile-based payment. And so in a focus group discussion, the women started to speak. And they said it's because when you pay on the mobile phone, my husband or partner, they get to see how much I'm getting in total. But when you're paying in cash, I hide the overtime payment and I only show the salary payment, so I have more agency on my income. So the bigger question then is, when we're talking about the product fit, the product then needs to basically connect to the demand what we're talking about here. And I think what I'm hearing from all of you is that the lived experience is extremely important, and finding that product fit is extremely important. And I have a few questions related to that here, coming to my window. Someone asked Mr. Kamil Shubho, to Kamal Bhai, although a good number of RMG factories adopted digital payment in 2020, some moved back. Although some factories adopted, digital payment in 2020, some moved back. He's asking why. So if you can take that question. And there's another question, which is, how can we graduate from financial inclusion to financial empowerment? Maybe, Shameran, you can take that. So
I'll make it very quick. it's always difficult to adopt something new. It's like, you know, in a regular ecology, there is, if people are driving cars with 50 miles per hour, to chase the car which is not following the law, you need a police car that will be driving 70 miles per hour. Then you need to train the police properly how to drive 70 miles per hour. You need to change the road curves. You need to change the, you know, the licensing arrangement. So anytime a new thing comes, okay, then there is always difficult to people. It's always better. It seems like the horse was always better than a new automobile. Okay, so that perception is there. Another point is cost. There is a cost always. Okay, and sometimes we don't. We have time. We take time to understand, or we need time to adjust on our side to you know, how to maximize the technical solution, and that will help, you know, cross-sell some additional product, but reduce the overall cost. Okay, instead of going that, people often say that you know, it's expensive, it cost us, but somebody has to bear some cost. So those are the phenomena I believe has impacted, and sometimes we, Rubaiyath, I'm going to take 30 seconds. Sometimes we look at very abstract way, and that gives us a convoluted and not necessarily an effective solution. We were having challenges 7 years ago that how do we pay salary for the RMG workers. And one of the challenges we faced is our agent point needs to have adequate liquidity. What I meant by that is that তাদের কাছে টাকা থাকতে হবে, okay? যে একজন electronically বেতন পেলো, the moment you are encashing this thing, you want to make sure the agent point across the country has cash available, okay? So I was discussing this thing, and one suggestion I heard that why don't you, instead of giving monthly salary, why don't you do daily salary, okay? So rather than taking 10,000 taka end of the month, yeah, the worker should be getting, you know, 70 taka per day, okay? And so that way 70 taka, when they will go to an agent point, they will cash out. There will be no liquidity problem. And I think that's extremely impractical, okay? Because the factory has its own economics, it has its own billing system, it has its own revenue system, okay? So often we look at solutions saying that, oh, it can be just switched off like this, but there are so many factors behind it. We need to incorporate all of them. Rubaiyath, probably I've taken a little extra time, but and those things when we are not able to solve, we are not able to reduce the cost, they are not able to reduce the cost, they're saying, okay, it's better to stay away from MFS for some time, we will come back to it later.
So incrementally build, I believe that's the message. Kamal bhai, incrementally build, that's the message that you're sharing.
We need to constantly we need to be patient and keep trying that how do we converge into a point where both parties are finding values.
Right, right. Great.
Yeah, I think, let me quickly share a couple of things.
Sure.
On that last one, I mean, aren't we seeing that across everything? That there was a forced uptake of digital, and now that we've gone back to some level of normality, we're doing part digital, part not, right? So for a time, we couldn't go to restaurants, so we were doing just takeout or delivery, but now the restaurants are open, so sometimes we get food at home and sometimes we go out. Like, we do sometimes grocery, you know, get delivered to our homes, but we're still going to grocery shops again. So it's really a demand-driven thing again, right? Lots of people had to move to digital financial services because they didn't have the option to go to bank branches or microfinance groups or whatever. Now that branches are open and groups are back on, some of them are continuing to do it through bkash, but some people are going back to, and they like that social sort of interaction and things like that, just like we like going back to restaurants. So I think the fact that there's been a backward sort of, we had, you know, we still do Zoom meetings, but we also have these gatherings. So my point is, at one point we had no choice, so we had to go full on digital. right? And now it's gone back to normal, so we've dialed it down a bit. And that's very normal. And I don't think that should be seen as us going backwards. It's now what we have greater choice, and we get to do what we want to do, sometimes digital, sometimes not. I think that's happening across everything, right?
I guess it's about the optimal choice.
Exactly. I think we're finding the equilibrium now, I guess.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But to your point, and the other quick thing I want to say is great example there so one that I talk about a lot and I've written about as well a little bit is, when bkash was starting, right? This is 2010. We were sitting in BRAC, very excited that bkash is coming, right? But we had a huge fear that all of our savings that in the microfinance space, all of these small deposits, these small retail deposits of microfinance clients, that it would all get cannibalized by bkash, right? We thought once they can have their money in their mobile phone, they will take all the money out of microfinance accounts and put them in the mobile phone. bkash started, bkash became very popular. bkash got to 10 million, 20 million, 30 million users or customers, but the money never left the microfinance accounts, right? And we tried to understand what was going on. And what we realized is, as you said, for the women who put their money in these microfinance accounts, they're trying to protect that money typically from their husbands and their brothers and their fathers and their sons. It's the men in the family that will usually take that money and set up a business and go bust or go drinking, go gambling. And for women to be able to protect that hard-earned money is really important. In the microfinance account, it's safe because you can't easily access it. As soon as you put it into your bkash account, somebody can take your phone, cash it out, and the money is gone. So again, I think the point is we need to understand the financial lives of poor people, right? And we make assumptions without understanding what's happening. That's, I think, our story again about that woman. We make a lot of assumptions which are completely wrong. And when you go and talk to people, you realize that their motivations and aspirations and fears are very different from what we think they are. So that part is really important. To the question about when can we go from inclusion to empowerment, honestly speaking, I don't even necessarily know what is full inclusion and when it becomes empowerment, because these are difficult. But I understand inclusion a bit better than I understand empowerment. Inclusion, for me, is having access to the products and services you need, right? And we all need multiple products and services, even when it comes to financial services. All of us in this room, right? And all of us, everybody outside. You need deposits products. You need credit products. All of us have credit cards. We have loans. We have car loans, mortgages. People need insurance products. People need pension products. People need payment services. People need remittance services. We all need it. And poor people have needed as much as we need it or more, right? And so, the whole idea of financial inclusion is to get people access to these products, as I said, in a way that's reasonable, responsible, reasonably priced, responsibly delivered, right? Now, when can we talk about empowerment? I think once you have access to what you need, that is empowerment. I don't know when that graduation happens, but for me, how can you be empowered if you don't have access to basic needs, right? So that is very important. And then, obviously I know there's a bigger thing about agency and all that, but, I think you need to meet fundamental needs.
Great. I think, the discussion is connecting very well to the audience because the questions that are being thrown into the answers that are coming together are syncing. So, Faheem, there are questions for you. So, one question is, how can we train the mass and change their mindset about adapting digital solutions to boost income and business? And also, we have been talking about mobile money, but also other digital currencies and their prospect on financial inclusion. If you could reflect on a little bit about other digital financial services. We have 3 more minutes, so quickly in 1 minute, because I'd have to do a concluding remark.
Sure. Okay. So I think that what we have done in terms of access and impact. So assume once we are onboarding the customer first, we tell the customer, and it's again through the mobile, that you go first to the star 468 and hash USSD channel and complete first your financial literacy program before even onboarding. So that actually gives us the idea that, you know, where the customer stands before even onboarding or before giving any financial services. Then afterwards, because, you know, we have, as all of you know, that Africa actually have so much data in the credit facilities. So the credit scoring module which we have, that actually gives the complete history of the customer, that, you know, where the customer stands from the financial point of view, from the cash flow point of view, what are the incomes, what are the expenses, and where the customer also needs the services. Remember, the customer also can not only obtain the business loan. The customer can also say, I want an education loan. I want an health loan. I want a loan for wedding. That's also allowed, actually. I want a loan for maybe, you know, any startup businesses. That, again, you know, have to go through some certain trainings and all that. So this is the impact and access, you know, which is available through the digital financial services. First, you know, you have to go through the e-learning trainings, which is very key for you. And that's not the end of the story. It's not like you have done the onboarding, so you have to do it. It's a continuous journey. It's every month when they are meeting, they have to do. Every quarter they have to do, so that we need to understand that where the customer is. And the SPM, the social performance management, is key to understand the impact in the society. Otherwise, you cannot make any personalized financial product for the customer to understand their needs before. As we have all said that, you know, the customer maybe is at the different point, and what we are understanding at the, you know, head office level is different. Thank you.
Fantastic. So we have come to the end of the session, so I'm asked to wrap up. I think, I mean, it was all just hitting up. I wanted to learn more. But thank you so much, dear panelists, for your great reflection from the field. I think our audience have learned a lot. Particularly, I think what we are hearing here is that, I mean, COVID has pushed us forward, but like a storm, I mean, there were a lot of things happening, but settlement, kind of finding an optimal solution that is happening. So a lot of the adaptations have shown us what is real and what is not. But what is important, I'm hearing from that for us to know what the real demands are and finding the right product to connect to it. We couldn't talk about the regulators, but I think, I mean, the point was raised that the regulators need to be educated too. They need to be prompt. They need to be, I mean, more agile in facilitating the adaptations. So I think there needs to be more connections between regulators and solution providers. And then also on the demand side, what we were speaking about is that, I mean, in terms of inclusion, so in terms of inclusion, let's say we need to understand better what the real needs are, challenges are, and find our product fit. And I think there we have to be patient. I think that's the message. We have to be patient, and we have to incrementally build. And on doing all sorts, I think, I mean, one other message that I have learned from you is that we need to find the right kind of connections between the different systems, bringing all this together from technology to finance to digitization to all the innovators coming together. I think that's where we need a lot of cohesion to move forward. So thank you once again for your great contribution, and thank you to the audience for your great reflection. So let's say that's a wrap. Thank you.